Hello, welcome to No One Plays, and a closer look at the 1.16 patch notes for EU4. I decided to go through the entirety of this document for your pleasure, and hopefully I can maybe explain a few things. There we go. Balancing the audio a bit. Have to do with their changes. So, the expansion features, so these are the ones you have to pay for. Yeah, sadly, probably 15 bucks again. You, as the Barbary nation, so that's Tunis, Morocco, and some others, you can now rate for slaves with your ships, hurting the Iberians' economy. Oops. And of course, giving you sailors from those slaves. Like, those slaves are actually just sailors for you, essentially. That's going to be an interesting mechanic. It's small enough to put it in the paid expansion, I guess. Now you can steal maps as a spy action. Spy actions have been overhauled completely, and it's an interesting feature since I think they nerfed spread of discoveries like immensely, so discovering is actually a lot more useful now. Then there's a whole bunch of new naval missions, which I mean I guess you can. They're fairly self-explanatory, I think. Just a little easier management of your fleets, really. So I'm actually kind of pissed that that is an expansion feature and not just a free one. Since it becomes fairly essential that you have these once your fleets like have to engage in all over the world. Managing them would become nearly impossible, as naval engagements have been changed fundamentally as well, and it's no longer just Death Stack City with the Navy, or at least it shouldn't be anymore. The way I interpret the Death Diary, I think that naval engagements will now be much more like land ones. Big engagements are still a thing, but there's a limit to how big it can be, because at one point the size is no longer useful anymore, since only so many can engage. Now there's a new unconditional surrender option for 100 war score. That is almost essential in multiplayer. There's so many rules about surrendering for 100% that this one can replace a lot of them, I think. This will occupy your land 100%, and then they can demand 100% war score. After that, call for peace will be gained at a very, very large rate. Your armies are also safe once you click that button, because they're exiled. Nobody can engage them anymore. So essentially, once you lose a war, you can just minimize the damage that they can do against you, which is really, really nice, actually. Now, we also have a major rework to espionage. That was one of the big ones, and I'm not sure, like, why is that not a free feature? It seems strange. Like, how would they split it up? Either way, you can now create a spy network with one of your diplomats, which will slowly tick up to 100 while he's working on it. And you can use those 100 points to spend them on different actions, like create a claim, for example, or sow dissidents, sow discontent. Stuff like that. It's just new actions now. It's kind of wonderful. But it could also be very, very annoying if your spy gets discovered almost immediately and you don't even get to the thresholds and cannot spend any more, or cannot do any more covert actions, or can't afford to get the claim, and have to wait for 5 years to actually be able to start claiming again. That could be really, really freaking annoying. But I'm guessing that claims are going to be fairly cheap and you have the spy network up fairly quickly. At least that's my best guess there. Now, having a spy network in another country gives you siege ability. Aggressive expansion will go down with that country. I'm not sure, is this actually an expansion feature as well? Because that would be kind of strange. Like, if it only gives siege ability if you have the expansion, it just seems like such a major thing, like the rework of the spy network that it should be a free feature. It's like it's fundamental to the game. Study technology has been nerfed to all hell because now it only gives you a discount, so you can't use it anymore for quick expansion or, you know, just being behind in technology on purpose, like many people would do in admin and Diplo, since there's not that many benefits to staying ahead in those two, especially in multiplayer. There's a couple more new espionage things that you can do now, and Hunt Pirates is now also here from the Eldorado DLC, so you don't have to buy that anymore. I don't even think you need to buy it for anything anymore, really. It's been picked dry from other DLCs now. Now, colonists and trade company provinces do no longer change religion or culture. I think they meant the trade company regions. So I assume that essentially there will be no more culture changes in Africa once you, like, if you colonize the land. I think that's how it was meant to be. Like, not that you have to turn it into a trade company and then it wouldn't change it anymore. It just doesn't change it anymore if it's within the trade company regions. Which is good and bad. It makes sense for most countries. It doesn't make sense, for example, if Malaya goes and settles the islands. Then it just makes absolutely zero sense. But it's also kind of a balancing feature, I guess. Oh, now you can rent out Carrettieri to other countries. It is a massive new feature. Is it gonna be absolutely wrecking multiplayer? You can send out like 30 men for potentially 0 ducats, not have any risk in that own war except your manpower and maybe a little bit of money, and intervene. And that's gonna be massive in big wars where it's just like you're not sure if you really want to commit to a side because they might lose, but you would also rather have that side fight on and try to win, and then you just send in a few men. That is an absolutely huge feature. Currently you can actually send out your mercenaries as well. So you could even use that, you know, influence ways, or influence the game without actually losing any manpower, which is pretty ridiculous. You can press sailors in occupied provinces, so that means if you occupy coastal provinces, you get the sailors from them, I assume. Sailors also being a new mechanic. Detached damage is now changed to repair damaged. That is again, just a comfort feature, really. Now you can just click a button and they will return to your fleet. Very, very comfortable if it goes together with all of these missions, of course. You can just click on a fleet that's on mission and then just give it the action to repair the damaged ships. Very nice. Like if you're preparing for something. Now you can send diplomat to conduct counter-espionage against a country, increasing the chance of detecting their attempts to build a spy network by 100%. This could be really freaking annoying if it's overpowered. I'm not sure how much that 100% is in the end effect, but just imagine if every time you try to build a spy network in the slightest, somebody just does counter-espionage on you and you're just absolutely completely incapable of creating a core or a claim. That would be terrible. Now, naval leaders are allowed to be reassigned from ships within supply range. That is amazing. So now you can actually, you don't have to put them into port anymore, which was so freaking annoying every time. Especially if you're at war and need to switch them around. Mercantilism doesn't really matter, but hey, you can now spend your Diplo points to increase it. Why would you ever do that if you can just spend your papal points? Well, to be fair, in a large nation, it would actually be better to increase your mercantilism than to increase development. There's just a certain threshold at which one Diplo development is less than one mercantilism in terms of money and power. Because mercantilism, of course, is a percentage essentially on all of your development, while one development just is that one development. You can now grant provinces to one of your subjects, even if it's not adjacent to them, as long as it's their core. Very nice. Added a loot map mode so you can actually see which provinces are very, very tasty still. Could be really nice for larger wars. Small wars, you never need it, but make it a really large one. That could actually enable some playstyles for me. Just thinking about it. Because usually it's just too much of a hassle to really pay attention to loot, but if you can just switch to a map mode real quickly and then move your armies around, it'd be quite useful. There's now a chance of capturing ships that would otherwise be sunk based on your maneuver skill, so maneuver becomes even better in naval combat, which it already was quite amazing, because he determined how you could engage. Maybe it's kind of a trade-off, because I think maneuver now is less important in battle than it used to be, since now they have a completely different system. Like, they no longer have essentially everybody getting positioned and then engaging. Losing a ship now causes loss of morale. I wonder which navy is gonna be like best suited for that. I give you a tip. England is gonna crush. Naval combat positioning concept is removed. Now introduce engagement width, so it's essentially combat width, which is determined by, I think it's just a baseline and then it's enhanced by leader maneuver skill and some global modifiers. So that's going to be essentially making navies work a lot like armies work, which is a big benefit for a gameplay reason. Less death stacks and more actually intricacies for naval combat and naval wars. I'm all for that. The only problem here I see is England. Just all these three changes combined with England sound like a terrible idea to me, because now they have the best morale. They have heavies that are better than anybody else's. Every time they kill an enemy ship, the enemy morale goes down, so the morale loss should be higher for every nation that isn't England, essentially. Combine that with engagement width, so only so many heavies can engage. There comes a point where an English heavy fleet is actually unbeatable, because you can only have so many ships in a single combat engaging, and if the ones that are not engaging are going to lose morale, and your ships are going to die first. That's just a fact. The fact of the matter is, unless you have an amazing admiral and they have none, your ships are going to die first. So all of these changes just make England seem as if they will have a navy that cannot be beaten. Which you can make the historical argument that, like, oh, they had a great navy, but it's not the same. It's not, for example, the same as fighting the Prussian troops. Like, this would literally be unbeatable here. While fighting the Prussian troops, you can still stagger in and try to destroy them. And you are usually successful. Plus, the Prussians at least have some competition in the army department. Like, about which one is the strongest nation. Well, England is standing alone, really. Anyways, moving on, we have a new map mode, States and Territories, that just highlights all of your states green, and territories are like a yellowish color, if I remember correctly. It's not a very useful map mode. Generally, yeah, just tells you which one of what land you have is still territories, essentially. Added a historical neutral tag, which makes countries less likely to become friends or enemies. Very interesting, could be game changing. I don't know which nations are actually like part of that tag or what have those tags on each other. But much more importantly, I don't know how strong this tag is. Like, if it's as strong as the historical friend one, then that would be insane. If a nation never fought, therefore they never fight in this game, that would be horrible if you can't call them in or some such. Admirals now have siege ability, which is completely pointless because it only increases blockade efficiency, which doesn't do jack shit. Merchant Marine now gives 50% sailors, and Press Gang gives now 20% sailor recovery. That is because navies are now much more dependent on your actual sailor count than force limit, which is kind of nice. I wonder if they're going to add some sort of like mercenary navies eventually. Or pressed navies, like merchant pressed navies instead of course, mercenaries. That'll be interesting to see. Yep, now we have sailors given from ports and development on the ocean, which you will need to build ships and repair them. You now have a little continue button at the end of the game, which, I mean, fine. So yeah, you can continue on playing. Apparently if you're not in Iron Man mode, but I have heard in Death Diary that Iron Man mode doesn't matter for that. So you can, you can go to like 20 more years if you really want to finish a war or do something. Could be really useful for multiplayer again. To like finish that conclusive end war or something like that. The degree to which trade nodes is monopolized, determined by the greatest trade power share, now adds up to 100% to the privateer power modifier. So, privateers can become really, really freaking strong in your trade node if you have all the trade power. So, say you're England, you have conquered the Netherlands, you have most of the trade power, 90%, they'll have a 90% bonus to their privateers. It's going to be rather freaking annoying, but you can hunt them down, so I don't think it's a huge change. And you will still want to monopolize. It just means that you have to hunt more. And that maybe, well, there'll probably be more hunting and less sending your trade fleet out to actually protect trade, because protecting trade is a way of monopolizing that is not very consistent and would probably be more hurtful to you if the privateers become stronger through that. Okay, we have now a province tooltip that shows information regarding the blockading fleet. That's kind of useful. Blockades are actually now indicated. Very nice. They implemented a states and territory system, which is very, very great. That's the change that excites me the most in this entire expansion. Since, I mean, this will replace the overseas mechanics, so now you have a completely different system where European states actually can make, like, outside of Europe territory work. Like, England can actually work with territory in Africa and gain significant amounts of power from them. Same with Portugal or Spain. So not everybody is just stuck there going east, essentially. Now they can go south and then east. So much better. I'm really looking forward to how this turns out. And it's also a kind of an indirect nerf to something like the Ottomans, because now they also are bound by states and territories. Not sure how many territories you can have, but I'm pretty sure that if the Ottomans want to expand like they usually do in multiplayer games, or just in single player when you're playing, that a lot of these will be territories. You gain territories and states through technology and government level mostly, as well as admin has a +3, which, I mean, that's not that huge. 3 more little regions. They added corruption, which is impacted by being behind in tech and being out of whack in tech. Like, if your military tech is much higher than your diplo and admin tech, you'll get more corruption as well. Being a big nation, oh god. Actually, being big gives you more corruption, I didn't know that. Being mercantile, that is wrong. They specifically said that wasn't the case. And it's being combated by investment in the budget. And then corruption impacts the minimum autonomy in a country, so that's absolutely terrible. And its ability to do espionage and all power costs. There's the big one. So you never want to have any corruption. Corruption is essentially just a massive nerf to anybody that's not a Western, because Western nations essentially have no choice but to tech ahead in military and almost neglect admin and diplo for the time being, because you need military to keep up. Admin and diplo, if you're behind, it doesn't matter that much. So you will have to spend a lot more on the corruption to keep it low. And you have to keep it low, otherwise your power costs go up, which would cause more corruption because you would fall behind in tech even more. It's a very, very iffy mechanic because it's a downward spiral for everybody that's not Western. And it even gives bonuses if you don't have any corruption, so. Rich get richer, poor get poorer. Great mechanic, guys. First you add a mechanic called revanchism to avoid death spirals, and then you try to add another mechanic to create death spirals called corruption. Game balance ones. Well, now in the buildings, docks now give sailors which you need to actually fill out your force limit, but at least the shipyards and grand shipyards have picked up that force limit. So you don't have to go without any way of increasing your force limit beyond, you know, the standard base per province. You can now move your capital inside a state. I wonder if this applies to former overseas territory as well, out of your continent. Would be kind of cool. Just move my capital over to an island where nobody can get to. Somewhere out in, I don't know, Indonesia. Can now always core your capital. Not sure if that was any different than before. You can now reform your government if you have a total of 18 tech levels, if you are one of them primitives. It could be useful, but probably not, because you don't get the tech boost, so I don't see why you would ever do that. Take that decision before. Now it's possible to use your subject's claim when threatening war. Again, a very good change, because now you can actually feed your subject without going to war. Quite nice. OPMs and free cities or trade league members are now less likely to buy provinces. Nice, because you don't want to build a trade league of OPMs and then they drop because they keep on expanding and keep on buying provinces. Or, you know, some player trolls you and just sells a province to an OPM, so you have less protection as a trade league member. Sneaky tactics, but they do happen in multiplayer a lot. Vassals of merchant republics now transfer 50% of their trade power to their overlord. That is great. Merchant republics have really been changed in that they are now the only nation where going tall sounds like a fantastic, fun, great idea, especially in multiplayer. Transferring trade power no longer costs a relationship slot. Again, that's the reason why, really. Now that you can get transfer trade power from essentially anybody, and just hopefully be able to pay them back, that's just amazing for you as a trade nation. And just, you know, in general for payments and such. And it's now a valid thing to get as a war goal, like to get money from. Some nations can really, really give you a lot of money from transfer trade power. Removed overseas impact on AE makes sense because nothing is really overseas anymore. No longer possible to make vassals embargo nations they have not discovered. Again, makes sense. And exploration is now again based on provinces as opposed to regions. That's okay. Doesn't really change much for me. Just gonna use the missions either way. Now, merchant republics that grow over the size of 20 provinces will now suffer a penalty to their republican tradition. Subjects do not count towards the limit, so I would say merchant republics are gonna be amazing at having like a bunch of very strong marches and just get those 20 provinces to like give you 600 development or some such and make ridiculous amounts of money. I mean, that's where I see the merchant republics now, and I kind of like the idea of it. Like, there is like a dedicated government type that can actually do a lot with money. Pretty great, because you can still have as many subjects as you want, really. Means that they, in single player, of course, will be rated as essentially the worst, because they're a republic, so they already have a hard standing, and they're capped to a couple of provinces, so you can't world conquest with them, and that's terrible. At least some people think. Aristocrats and merchant republics now increase sailors by 25% instead of 10% land force limit, so doesn't really matter that much. Merchant republics need a lot of sailors to get a huge trade fleet going, so it makes some sense. I'm not sure if I like it too much, because they also need a lot of freaking manpower to make up for their size. Half the size of Merchant Republic production bonus, probably as a reaction to this one, since they now can get a lot more trade power in different nodes, especially if people play along with them and actually make a ton more money. So having that makes sense. Especially since now you give the bonus always, even if you just have transfer trade power from them. On anything but gold. Lack of debate now gives corruption. Well, England, you're gonna get some corruption, I guess. Each seat now has a 25% chance to actually support an issue, which is nice. You actually get some seats for free instead of having to pay them all. Using policies, I already, I think, explained that one, yes. To plus 3 states, that's not a lot. That's like 3, maybe like 12 provinces extra they can have as a state. Could be useful, but probably only for world conquest and single player, really. Expansion ideas finisher is now 25% state maintenance. I can see this one be really, really useful. Eventually you'll be able to have like 100 states, and I've seen states, they cost probably around 0.6 maintenance, maybe even more, maybe a whole ducat per state, and a 25% discount on that can be huge. Like, say you have an average cost of a state for like 8 ducat, since you have a lot that are far away. So expansion really helps mitigating that a bit. That's, I mean, 25 ducats, that's a lot on the margin. For one idea to get 25 ducats extra, that's huge. For most nations. There's very few nations that make more than like 400 ducats a month. Military seal act no longer gives discipline. It's still a good act. Too bad. I wish they would have replaced it with something. Since now the quantity one, I know what it's called, will just give a flat out better bonus than this one. This one is quality and religious. The other one is religious and quantity, gives 10% plus 5% manpower recovery, I think. So the other one is going to be much better, but it's still one of the ones you want to pick. I mean, 10% morale is something you don't really want to throw away. In multiplayer, that is. Religion, added fetishism. Well, let's just... There we go! That makes a lot more sense. Because they literally just removed animism and just called it fetishism, essentially. It's a shit religion, it's very bad, you want to get rid of it whenever you have it. So it didn't really change much at all. Rebels with unrest below 0% now will still revolt if they have got a supporter. Not sure what that one means. Like, will it be that somebody will be able to support rebels inside of your country and then they will revolt even if you have like -10 unrest in your entire country and they can't even push it like below -8? I really hope not. Maybe one that is like very close to rebelling might still rebel. This could be potentially horrible. Like people just chaining rebels in your country despite your country being 100% well managed and in a great position. Could be really freaking annoying. Reduce liberty desire from tariffs, they talked about that in a death diary. It's quite nice because usually tariffs would just cause all of your subjects to become disloyal either way. But there's one thing that's kind of strange. They have no mention this entire thing about reduced liberty desire from size of colonies, which I thought they would really do as well, since colonies become overpowering so quickly. Portugal cannot have... Like, Portugal couldn't even hold the Caribbean or Brazil. Neither of them are small enough, really. Decreased tariffs cost to a sane level from 100 to 25. Well, they really increased it from 0 to 25 because the tooltip said 100, but it cost 0 admin. And now it costs 25, and they fixed the bug where it didn't cost jack shit. Technology group, they added the Central African and East African, and renamed the Sub-Saharan to West African. East African, or should I say Central African, is actually a decent one. It's like 165%. They start behind at like Tech 2, but it's not an unmanageable tech difference. It's very close to like the Chinese tech group. So I don't imagine it to be too difficult to keep up with the Europeans and then westernize adequately. Mercenaries can now be built in overseas provinces. Well, if you knew the bug, then it was always possible. You were always able to hire mercenaries in overseas provinces, you just had to make a template for them. But now you can do it without a template, that's nice. Countries with very few forts relative to their size, and less than 10 forts total, so even small nations, now have their unfortified provinces worth more war score when occupied by enemies. So that's a fuck you to all the players that say forts are useless. Doesn't change the fact that forts are useless. Doesn't change the fact that, well, I guess I just have to re-siege some provinces in my country. But they're easy to re-siege since they have no forts. It makes sense. It makes at least some amount of sense. Like, that way you now have to build some forts. A good fort front line at least. They're just really trying to make you to force you to build forts, and it's okay. In multiplayer they're at least not useless. In single player I would still never build forts. Except maybe keep the ones that the AI built so, you know, they handle rebellions a little bit better. Ships blockading now given naval tradition, so pulling your trade ships out of your trade nodes will no longer crash your naval tradition completely. Very nice. Call for peace is now reset for allies if a stab hit is refused. So that's also quite a good change for multiplayer, because people will be stubborn and it can result in your allies being very upset with you if you have to keep on staying in a war and they get more and more war exhaustion. So that's quite nice. The trade conflict CB no longer allows you to take land, revoke cores, release vassal nations in peace. That sucks a lot. They do so much good to the trade nation and now so much bad. I mean, it's still an okay CB, I guess. Especially if the enemy cannot do anything to you as well. It could actually have been useful. In a recent war that I did. So trade conflict CB still sounds decent enough. You can get a lot of money out of it. That's what it's really for. And maybe if it's like, it's almost riskless money if the enemy cannot take land from you as well, that'd be great. Victory cards, now you lose 50% of the total score if somebody has one on your former territory. I'm pretty sure former soil will be calculated by province history. So I doubt there will be an exploit where you can just remove a core and then it will no longer count against you. Maximum power now scales with all power costs as well. Again, that is for the corruption mechanic. Because if you have 100% corruption and your costs go up by, I think it was like 100%, then you might not be able to pay if you're Western at least. Race province now actually increases unrest. That's okay. Horse needed a nerf. They still need nerfs. The Threaten war is no longer good against coalitions because now they take them into account and will fight the shit out of you. AI no longer pirates nodes or your allies, or allies would be offended. Oh my god, yes! 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 No more! We'll have no more alliance breaks. Just because an AI decides to just pirate the shit out of you. AI will no longer help allies with the rebels unless they have high trust and manpower. It's a nice change. It's a little bit less convenient for you, but it makes the game harder, legitimately harder. As opposed to just cheese the AI to deal with all of your rebels. Loyal subjects now use their overlords, allies and rivals to determine military access acceptance. Very nice. So your enemies might not get access through your vassals anymore. Or more importantly, like your enemies of your allies. Which you might not be fighting, but otherwise they might get military access anyways. And you might just be a buffer between them to stop the enemy. So that's very useful change. Now, in the economy, this is all AI stuff by the way. In the economy, we have the AI won't build buildings during war, because they can actually spend that money on war, so be prepared for even more mercenary spam. AI will try to spend a huge treasury, that's good. They now cheat maintenance on border forts and will never mothball these, so they will not pay for any forts that are on the border. And the AI only recruits infantry mercenaries, so no more mercenary cannons. That will make them a lot more capable in war, because they will waste a lot less money. So I assume that their whole like has loans modifiers will be much less significant when determining peace, or getting peace from them. Like national ideas. You have a lot of these here. I guess you can just pause and read, but this is just essentially fixes to the AI going brain dead in various situations. AI made less likely to recruit troops in dangerous areas, so that will help with the whole like being able to stack wipe the enemy AI and then just running across their country, taking one stacks on one at a time just very easily. So just general improved pathfinding, and they no longer cheat in forts next to wasteland, which is not really a huge issue to me. I don't care about the AI cheating. If the AI cheats, so be it. If it gives me a harder challenge, that's fine. I really don't like when they do changes so the AI doesn't have to cheat anymore. Like when they changed attrition to be completely and utterly worthless, so it gives essentially everybody the same amount of attrition almost. And it caps at 5%. I liked it a lot better when the AI used to cheat on the attrition. But at least for player versus player, you had that massive potential attrition hit that a player could take. And sometimes would have to take against certain nations. But now attrition is literally a non-factor. Wait. Yeah, never mind. Okay, interface changes. Just some long country names, no more clipping, a little bit better rounding. Modifiers are now sorted by name, that's very, very nice, so it's actually a useful screen. The ledger has a development page. Not going to be very useful, I don't think. Unless you can actually develop from it, that'll be okay. Straits are now called red if they're blockaded by the player, and dark gray if they cannot be blockaded. It's kind of a nice little indicator. Is there anything else? I'm just scrolling through it slowly, so you can just pause if you really want to read something here, but these tooltips don't really change much. There's a lot more important stuff further down, though. Da-da-da. Selecting trade mission is now more intuitive. That could be very nice. I think they had to change outline somewhere else, where it says that you can just click on the node now, like click trade mission, then click on the node, and that's it. It's gonna be quite a big change there. Okay, I mean, there's not much else. Then we come to the user modding part, which, I mean, I don't care about. If you really care about it, you can go to the forums where this entire list is handily posted. Now we come to the script, which is actually quite important. Remove shamanism. Oh, never mind. They didn't replace animism. They replaced shamanism with fetishism. Still, same fucking thing. They added Iceland. That's a formable tag. It's kind of nice. Huh. There's no change for Rome. I know they added Rome as a formable tag. Not sure why it doesn't show up here. They rebalanced a whole bunch of events, but I don't think there are any that are truly important. They had a whole bunch of new ideas for all the new nations. Of course, they don't outline them here, so it doesn't really make much sense. Less religious unity for Vijayanagar and giving some infantry power. Very nice. Always in favor of more military. Then for the setup, we have a lot of different changes in different regions. We have a lot more provinces in the Congo Basin. They added a strait to Iberia and North Africa, so that's great for both the North Africans and for the Iberians, because that makes that territory so much easier to get to. And if you think about it, now the English naval superiority matters very little to Castile, because they can just go and conquer Western Africa anyways. Let's say that England has some territories down there. Well, Castile can just walk there and take it all over, and England can't really do anything. At least if they protect the straits correctly, that is. Former tax in Ireland, so former provinces, doubling the size of Ireland, essentially. Very good. A buff for England. England needs a buff in terms of development. England essentially needs a nerf now for their navy, as I've outlined before. But their development has always been terrible, and in multiplayer they're relegated to a naval power that's not able to do much outside of their navy, which is always sad to me, because they need something else. They revised the map of Sweden, Finland, England, Scotland and Scandinavia. Finland, Sweden and Scandinavia, okay. Yeah, it's just a lot of different little changes. It's very nice. But especially for like Finland and Sweden, they also did a lot of culture changes, which just makes Sweden a lot stronger, I think. After all the nerfs, they now finally buffed Sweden again. They revised the map of northern Russia and added the ODF tag. That had a shit ton of controversy on the forum, of course, since Russia is a touchy subject. Probably second only to the Byzantines or the Serbian territories. They added a little bit of development to the French starting area, so yay for that. France was outclassed by Burgundy quite heavily, so I'm enjoying the thought of France just being a little bit stronger. The big blue blob has really not existed since the last like 3 patches or so, and I'm really hoping that it will return. As much as it might be a little bit stale, it still feels wrong not to have a strong power in Western Europe. They reduced the starting development of Lithuania though, which again, I am very much in favor of. They buff Russia a little bit and reduce the Commonwealth a little bit, because the Commonwealth used to be just the hegemon of almost every game. Unless Poland loses to the Teutonic Order early on, which is a possibility, they would always win after that, because their total development was massive. The Mira culture is now in the Chinese tech group, so they're no longer in the culture group, so they're no longer their own little sad culture that had no connection. Estonia is now part of the Baltic culture group because the Finno-Ugric one was destroyed. Krallin was moved to the Russians, and Scandinavian was renamed to Nordic, which then included the Finnish, as well as the Sami, I think, unless they removed Sami, but I know that land up there is now in the Nordic group. And now there's only a little province named Urgic, or not province, a little culture named Urgic, which is just the Permian culture, and that's it. The Magyar culture was removed and was changed into Carpathian, which now includes Hungarian, Romanian, and the new Slovak and Transylvanian cultures. So it's a nice little group now. Finally, Hungary has some cultures to expand into and, not just isn't forced to culture convert to get a better culture group, to get some better base of power. Renamed the Arab culture group Levantine and made it massive because they added the Turks to it. Turks are now essentially in the Arabian group, while the Turkmens were added to the Hordes, to the Altai group. And the Azari was added to Iran, that's fine. Persian culture wasn't that strong, a little bit more cultures there. Sounds good to me, but this Levantine group will be massive. It's the Arabians plus the Turkish. Maybe they thought they had to buff the Ottomans a little bit more, since they did debuff them, not being able to get that many states as they used to be able to get. Added the Iceland tech, they already said that. Oh, they removed the Quasim culture, which makes me very sad, because all those times you saw the Quasim Empire, it was beautiful and now it's gone forever. They added Nitra tag for, I think it was the Slovak culture. Quite nice, a little bit of Hungary that can be released potentially. Well, it's now part of the British culture group because they now have the Highlander in the Highlands, which is part of the same culture group as the Irish now, I think. I'm pretty sure that's how they changed it. And I'm pretty sure Breton is now part of the French culture group. So lots and lots of changes. They had Naboo tag. Changed a few more cultures around. Nothing like amazing. And then they split a whole bunch of regions. That was probably because they had to balance the regions a little bit, since they thought that regions would be the base for territories and states, but then they chose the smaller version, which makes a lot more sense. Otherwise, multiplayer would be a mess. Just gonna scroll through the rest of these, since they're very small changes. I would say rather small changes in the regions. Now we're gonna get to bug fixes, which again, just scrolling through slowly. So you get to read everything if you so desire and have enough time to pause. Because I know that sometimes people say, I give you enough time to pause, but then they just keep on moving way too quickly, so you have to pause in a split second. And here is an amazing change, an amazing bug fix. Trade wind icons no longer get stuck on the screen. Fuck you green arrows, I hate you so much. Thank you for being gone. Ugh. They were the bane of my existence whenever I had a long game, and I just don't want to reload for them every single time. And that, what else? Now we have the AI display correctly when you do a vassalization. Very nice. Fixed an exploit where you could bypass the guarantees. Been adding countries as co-belligerents. Again, that will just hurt you then, I guess. Instead of just being able to bypass your own guarantee and then just Or maybe it was the bypass guarantees from somebody else, so they would still join if they're a co-belligerent. That would be interesting. Maybe it now counts a guarantee like an alliance, so they would come in if somebody's co-belligerented. Oh yeah, that was a big change here. You can now select... I'm not sure why this is in the bug fixes down here. This should be up in another one, where you had all the other trade stuff in there. You can now select trade nodes for trade-related naval missions by clicking on the map. That is amazing. That is so good. It's not really a bug fix, but it's amazingly good. It makes the entire experience just so much more streamlined, as opposed to just like scrolling through the freaking list every time. Bugs fix, so the AI should no longer rival you if you have 80 more trust. Very nice. And now we finally have the caravans visible again. It's not really a big change, but it's a nice one. I really like the visual aspect of this game, with the map painting and everything, and just getting the fidelity up again and getting those little details in there just makes it so much more lively. They changed it now. Demanding vassalization of a country becomes a vassal. Now lose all their vassals and protectorates and marches, so I assume you don't get them anymore. That's the big change. So sadly that would change it, so you cannot no longer get vassals of vassals by making somebody as of you. And you can no longer just gain extra vassals from them. Oh well, it makes sense. Before you could like get 300% war score no problem by just vassalizing somebody that has a bunch of vassals. Yeah, I think that is everything I've highlighted. Oh, not quite. AI should no longer reject valid peace deals if they have been predicted to as accepted. Was a pretty big issue whenever you played multiplayer and then you just let one day tick by and freaking peace deal was invalidated because then that one day the AI did something. It was very freaking annoying, and that is a very welcome fix. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. It's been very long and I've been talking for way too much with a sore throat. Anyways, that was the entirety of the patch notes. There seem to be a few things missing, but that is a theme of these paradox patch notes that I have noticed quite a few times. But yeah, it is quite a load of changes and I'm very excited to start playing. This week will be all about playing more and more of that juicy expansion. Hope you guys have enjoyed and I'll see you guys next time.